Greetings, I'm Hondo, and this is my review of the Darkglass B7k pedal. This pedal functions as a DI, so I'm going to be running straight from my Modern Vintage MVP4 straight into the pedal and then into Ableton. So this is one of the older generations of Darkglass pedals. I think this came out before they started doing like the Ultras and everything. But this thing is still built like a tank and it still looks really modern. This faceplate that's on it is particularly cool, the black part. If you want to keep that looking neat, you might want to be careful with it because I kind of scratched mine a little bit. But the only other thing is that since there's not as much real estate on this pedal on the front between the switches and knobs like there is on the Ultra, the words that tell you where the attack and grunt switches, what they actually do, they're kind of smashed together. But after you use this pedal for a while, you're not even going to need to read those whatsoever. But yeah, Darkglass stuff in general is built incredibly well and it looks really cool, and this is no exception, so no surprises here. On the upper left hand side of the pedal you have the blend control, and what this does is it blends between the driven sound and your clean sound, which is always kept at unity gain at all times. Then the level knob controls the level of the driven signal, and the drive knob controls how much gain you have in the driven signal. In between them you have the attack and the grunt switch. These switches are super powerful. They control a boost, cut, and flat setting for the high end and low end of the sound, and setting these kind of how you want is super important. Beneath them you have the 4-band EQ with lows, low mids, high mids, and treble. And then you have two buttons that control the frequency points for the low mids and high mids. You get 1000 hertz and 500 hertz on the low mids, and then 3000 hertz and 1500 hertz on the high mids. On the left hand side of the pedal you get a XLR out and a ground lift and the regular 1/4 inch output, and then on the right hand side of the pedal you get the 1/4 inch input and also a 1/4 inch parallel out, which is really nice because you can send a clean signal straight through the pedal into a different piece of equipment like another amp maybe, or straight into the recording console if you want to do some cool blending types of sounds. If you happen to be shopping the B7k against the B7k Ultra, there's a couple of differences between the pedals that you might want to keep in mind. Controls wise, on the Ultra there's a master volume, where on this pedal you're basically controlling the volume of just the driven sound. Also on the EQ points, there's 3 EQ point options for each of the mids on the Ultra, and there's just 2 settings on the B7k. And then also on the Ultra you get the ability to use just the EQ without the drive, which you can't do on this pedal. And then finally on the Ultra you also get the cab sim option, which is not on here. So if you're kind of trying to decide between whether to get the B7k and the B7k Ultra, those are things you should probably keep in mind. So first off, Darkglass sent me this pedal to check out to see if I wanted to do a review on it, and I greatly appreciate that, so thank you very much, Darkglass. And if I'm you, probably the first thing that I would be asking about this pedal is, at this point, there's so many different options in the Darkglass kind of family of distortions. Where does the B7K really kind of fit in? And I think when it comes to this pedal and a couple of the other pedals, it's kind of like a combination of different features that you get in a particular pedal. And I think where the B7K kind of stands apart from the others is that it can give you a very modern and aggressive type of sound, but it also has some transparency and kind of dynamics to it. And I think it's the only pedal that does that really, really well. That does both of those things really, really well in the Darkglass line. For instance, you have something like the Vintage Ultra, which I did a review for, and I'll throw it up in the corner. That pedal is really dynamic, and it kind of lets the sound of your bass come through, but it doesn't have like that really aggressive modern kind of vibe to it like the B7K does. And then if you compare the B7K against something like the Atom, then that definitely is just as aggressive, but given all the different compression features and stuff in there, it's not quite as dynamic and lively feeling as a B7K is. So there's definitely like a specific set of qualifications that the B7K has that none of the other pedals really have in that particular combination. So if you're looking for kind of like what, in my opinion, is like the Darkglass sound that kind of got defined when they came out with the pedals, back in the day, the B7K or the B7K Ultra or the B3K is kind of like where it's at. And speaking of the B3K, Amos Heller just did an awesome video on the B3K, and I'll put a link to that up in the cards. If you were looking for that type of sound, the pedals, like I mentioned before, that you're going to want to look at are the B3K, the B7K, and the B7K Ultra. And if you look at this video for the B7K and then check out Amos's video for the B3K, you'll get a really good idea of like kind of which direction you want to go in. And generally all his videos are awesome, so I just recommend subscribing to him, and he's a cool dude. But yeah, I think that this pedal has a pretty cool specific place in the Darkglass lineup, but at the same time is flexible enough that if you want to have this sound on your board, you kind of can't go wrong with it. Speaking of not going wrong, if you find yourself using this pedal and you have any kind of trouble dialing in a particular tone that you're looking for, one of the things that I recommend is to start with the attack and the grunt switch, because those switches kind of define the top and bottom of your sound very well, and you can use the rest of the controls to kind of like fine tune the rest of your sound pretty easily. Say for instance, if you're going for like a punk sound, and you want it to be kind of like articulate, and you're going to be playing a bunch of fast eighth notes, you can say, okay, I'll start off with the attack and the boost setting, so you get like a lot of like that nice upper mid-range and high-end grind, and then set the grunt setting to flat or cut if you have a bass that has like a lot of low-end output on it. And then that way you're like right in the ballpark, and then you can use the 4-band EQ to kind of carve the sound out the rest of the way. Using that method, I found it was very easy to kind of get to any type of tone that I wanted. And this pedal covers a pretty wide range of different drive sounds, as you heard in the sound clips earlier and in the bonus clips that I'm about to play in a minute. You can get everything from like a nice old school thumpy kind of like B15-ish type drive to some of the really super modern, like really high-end or high aggression types of sounds with this one pedal, which is really cool. But yeah, so check out these sounds in the bonus clips. So overall, I think that the B7k family of pedals kind of define the new gold standard of like what aggressive bass distortion should sound like, and rightfully so. But I think a lot of people kind of have this family of pedals just associated with like really hard rock and metal and stuff like that. But I would say even if you weren't looking at this pedal necessarily because you don't play in those genres, if you do get a chance to spend some time with it, I would say definitely go for it, because I think there's a lot of players out there that might really enjoy using this pedal in other genres that aren't metal and that aren't like really like heavy, like, you know, alternative rock or whatever, because the pedal is very flexible and it works really well with the tone of your bass. So, you know, if you like the rest of the gear you have in your chain, then the B7K could probably slot in there pretty nicely and give you a very cool, versatile pedal that may give you like a tonal option that you never really had before. So all that is to say, just if you get the opportunity, check it out. It's a badass pedal. So that's it for this video. I hope you dug it. If you did, please do consider subscribing and hitting the little notification bell, and maybe leaving a thumbs up on the video, or maybe even sharing it with other people. That would be really awesome, and I would be forever grateful. In the description below, you will find links to the PayPal donation site, which is kind of how I'm going to fund the channel moving forward, as well as a link to my Discord and my Twitch channel, which I've started being way more active on lately. We're having a ton of fun over there, so it'd be really cool if you could come hang out. Also, there'll be links for my Instagram, and if you want to shoot me an email, my email will be down there as well. Aside from that, I hope you are staying happy and staying healthy, and I hope I see you around soon. Take it easy.